Hola, and welcome back to another episode of the Buzzed Pucks podcast. As same as last time, I'm Bert.
I'm Clay.
And this time, we're going to be covering the Eastern Conference
Part
preview.
2 of our preview episodes.
There you go, part 2. So, just a reminder, I'm going to be covering the Metropolitan Division. Clay is going to be...
have the East.
There you go. No.
Atlantic. Oh, man.
There it is. It was the East last year.
I'm already messed up.
It's the East last year, right? Speaking of mess-ups, would you like to go ahead and...
I have to make an addendum. So, all of my standings last week were wrong.
They were really wrong.
They were bad. I don't know what I was looking at. Bad News Bears. So, I'm going to fix this now.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, just to say, I did think they sounded weird when you said it on the show, and I was like, maybe I'm wrong. And then later when I listened back, I was like,
nope.
No, those were definitely wrong.
Nope. So, Calgary didn't make the playoffs.
Nope.
Let's start with that. They didn't make the playoffs. They were just outside of it. The Ducks were under the Sharks and the Kings, and both of those guys only had 49 points. So they were tied. Vegas was not third in the division; they were second.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just go to the order of the Canadian teams: was Toronto, Edmonton, Winnipeg, Montreal, Calgary, Ottawa, Vancouver. So
there you go. If you listen to the first episode, and are like, that doesn't sound right. It's because it wasn't.
It's because it's not.
But stuff happens. We'll be wrong from time to time.
We're gonna be wrong a lot, and we just decided to start this series out with a bang.
With incorrect information. But that being said, that's covered. So let's get to the East.
Get right into it.
We want to pop these beers.
Yep.
And let's get to it. Hey, I'm going to start with the Metro, and we're going to start with the Carolina Hurricanes. Just like last time, I'm going to go in alphabetical order by city or state name. So Carolina comes first there. They were pretty busy in the offseason. Compared to some of the other Metro teams at the very least. They traded Alex Nedeljkovic to Detroit for Jonathan Bernier, who they did not sign, and a third-round pick. I don't know why they did that. I really don't, because Nedeljkovic is a younger goalie. He played very well for them last year. I believe he was third in the Calder voting, even. Like, that's how well he played. And they traded him for a third, and the signing rights to Jonathan Bernier, who they then in turn did not sign. I don't know. And Detroit did end up signing him for really not that much money. I'll say what they signed him for unless you want to keep it.
I mean,
Did you miss that?
I'm working on it. No, I have it. I just can't find it.
They signed him for $3 million, I think, for a couple of years. So it's not even a crazy contract to ask for. But Carolina didn't want to do it for some reason. Another trade that they did was they traded...
2 years, $3 million.
2 years, $3 million. There you go. Another trade that they did is they traded Warren Foegele for Ethan Bear straight up, I believe.
Yes.
And so Foegele... Yeah, we mentioned that a little bit. Some of these deals we'll have mentioned in the last episode as well. Yeah. We'll just give a short recap of them again. Warren Foegele for Ethan Bear straight up. Fogel's kind of a streaky goal scorer, but he had an alright year last year.
And he's young.
And he's a young guy, too. So is Ethan Bear. I thought it was a little weird because Ethan Bear is a younger guy, but I guess he wasn't getting that much playing time. Well, he did play 43 games last year. I guess he was playing just okay for Edmonton last year, but the entire defense of Edmonton was playing just okay last year. So I guess it's a fine deal. It gives... the Hurricanes another defenseman to plug in there since they lost Dougie Hamilton to free agency as well. So, yeah, I think it's a fair deal. Maybe kind of a little bit of a weirder deal, but, not bad. They did sign, going back to their goalies for a second, since they did not re-sign Jonathan Bernier, they did sign Antti Ranta and Frederik Andersen for $2 million and $4.5 million apiece. These guys are both injury-prone goalies.
Yeah.
They both have missed huge swaths of the season the last couple of years due to injuries, and Carolina just traded a stud rookie goalie to sign 2 veteran goalies that are injury-prone.
And a lot of Rantanen's injuries are, groin-related.
Yeah, groin-related. Frederick Anderson, I think, has had a battery of injuries.
Yeah.
But, like, $4.5 million for Anderson and $2 million for Raanta. Now, on their own, those numbers don't seem that bad. But together, $6.5 million for two injury-prone goalies when you could have kept your rookie goalie and maybe signed Raanta, and the number still would have been less than that. I don't know. It seems like a weird deal.
Right.
I don't really get that unless there was something behind the scenes we don't know about the whole Nedeljkovic situation, but not that I'm aware of. Usually things like that come out.
At this point.
At this point, but who knows. Other minor signings that they did is they signed Ian Cole, who's like an older defenseman, but, depth. Jordan Martinook, Derek Stepan, and Stefan Newson. All of these are just like depth signings.
Mm-hmm.
One puzzling signing that they did do is that...
Hoping you mentioned this.
Don't worry. is that they signed Anthony DeAngelo. Now, Anthony DeAngelo was on the Rangers.
He was okay.
He's an okay defenseman. I think he's like an offensive defenseman, but he's a serviceable defenseman.
Yeah,
but the puzzling thing about this is
an NHL caliber defenseman.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, but if it wasn't for the fact that he's a giant asshat, he would probably play on any team he wanted in this league. But he is a giant asshat.
He's a giant asshat.
He seems to be, as far as I can tell, like a huge conspiracy theorist, and crazy conspiracies.
He's super right wing.
He's super right wing. We'll not get into politics too much here, but he's like off the deep end.
Right.
And on top of that, he got punched in the face by, I think, either Georgiev or Shesterkin on the Rangers. I think it was Georgiev. Punched him in the face after a game.
Yep.
Because I think he was jawing at somebody else on the Rangers. He might have been yelling at like Keandre Miller or something like that.
It was a botched play that he gave up on.
Yeah, and then he was like yelling at Georgiev, and then Georgiev just socked him in the face, which goes pretty far to tell you that this was probably happening a lot.
I don't even know if Georgiev was playing that game.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
He got punched out, and then the Rangers were like, you know what, fuck you. You're going to get... I think they even put him on waivers, and nobody took him. They buried... I don't remember if he even played in the minors at all. But they just buried his contract in the minors, and that was that. And then they cut him in the offseason, which his contract wasn't that bad, and I think this contract is a 1-year, $1 million deal. It's not a lot, but still, A lot of players and coaches were going to the higher-ups talking about his treatment of Keandre Miller. Yes. Apparently, as far as I recall, he was being kind of racist towards... Keandre Miller is a young black defenseman on the Rangers, and Tony DeAngelo is just a piece of shit. Like, really. I don't know why the Hurricanes signed him. So, just keep that in mind. Don't cheer for him. I want to see how him and Ethan Bear get along. Oh, yeah, that's right. Ethan Bear is... He's First Nation. First Nation, yes. Yeah, so, we'll see. Maybe he'll get punched out again this year. That'd be great to watch his own teammate punch him out. So, moving on from him, they re-signed Andrei Svechnikov, which is pretty big. They signed him to an 8-year deal, so max length, for $7.75 per year. That's pretty reasonable for Svechnikov, who is a perennial 30-40 goal scorer. He's a star. He's young. He was like the first big piece of like the Hurricanes rebuild in recent years, and I wrote it down. He's only 21. That's it. Yeah, and he's already like a fair force in the league. Him and Aho together are great. Him and Aho's contracts together, they have both of their best forwards locked up through 24-25. So that's great for them. Yep. And already, Hurricanes already a team people are like. They might win this division. They might be contenders in the East. They might go to the Stanley Cup Final. They have their star forwards locked up for a few more years at the very least. Another kind of puzzling thing that they did was they offer sheeted Jesper Kotkaniemi from Montreal. Now, it's not super weird. Kotkaniemi is a young, serviceable player with room to grow, but they offered him a 1-year, $6.1 million deal. That's a lot for a guy who was scratched in the playoffs a bunch last year. It was only 1 year? I thought it was longer. No, it's only 1 year. Okay. And so part of the weirdness of it is not just that number, but he'll be an RFA after the year, and so his qualifying rights for the RFA. So, like, if another team tried to offer him, would also be $6.1 million. Yeah. So, the Hurricanes are kind of stuck with that. Like, excuse me, maybe they don't care. Maybe that money is like whatever. But like, I don't know. It just seems weird, and I understand that it's kind of a retaliation offer sheet for what Montreal did with Aho last year.
It's 100% a retaliation one with that $20 signing. Come on.
It seems just kind of childish to me, you know?
Very much so. But it's one of those things, if they offer sheeted him, they wanted him.
True. Now, again, I think Kotkaniemi is a good young player, but like $6.1 million is a lot for a guy that kind of struggled the last year. They also lost a first and a third because Montreal did elect to let him go, which I actually think that was a smart idea by Montreal. They got that first and a third.
Because that's what the arbitrator said.
Yeah. And, Kotkaniemi goes to the Hurricanes. Not that, like, predictive lineups or anything to go by, but, like, from what I've seen, they have him listed as, like, a third-line player. So $6.1 million for a third-line player is quite a lot.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe he'll become a huge force for the Hurricanes this year, and maybe that'll look like a very smart deal. I don't know. It just seems kind of odd. It seemed a little childish to me. Less the retaliation offer sheet, more the like, they put like the $20 signing bonus, and there was all these like tweets from the Hurricanes media team, like kind of taunting Montreal, and it kind of got to a point where I thought it was kind of annoying.
I mean, they're a newish team. Whatever.
For whatever reason, their Twitter team is all about like shit talking and stuff. So
who cares?
Who cares? It's Twitter. It doesn't matter. So as far as their season outlook goes, I would say they're definitely a top contender in the Metro. Probably a top contender in the East as well. I would say a huge question mark is their goalies. Can Anderson and Raanta stay healthy the entire season? And also, is Tony DeAngelo going to do anything? Mm-hmm. Is he going to be an asshole like he was on the Rangers? We'll have to see with that. And they do have a weird rivalry with Montreal now. So, like, maybe... Actually, that might make those games a little bit more fun to watch. But it's kind of like an executive rivalry less than a team rivalry.
They have a weird rivalry with a couple of teams. Because no one really views them as a rival. But
there's not a lot of hatred between other teams and them. Even in their division, even in the Metro division.
Like, they have a weird rivalry with the Capitals.
Yeah.
But the Capitals don't even care. Capitals fans
it's kind of like the Penguins and the the Blue Jackets. Whereas, like, they have played in the playoffs. There is some heat there, but it feels like, like one side hates the other side a lot more than the other side does. So I don't know. Speaking of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
They're
up next. So, obviously, I touched on the Seth Jones trade to Chicago. Just a reminder, he got traded with a first and a sixth for Adam Boqvist, a first, a second, and a lottery-protected first next year. It turns into a 2023 first-round pick if Chicago is in the lottery this upcoming season, which they might be. They got a lot for Jones. I mean, I like it for Columbus. They got...
It's great rebuild for Columbus.
Yeah, they got a young defenseman to replace Seth Jones, who might even equal or exceed Seth Jones. Who knows? It's hard to tell sometimes. They got 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. Even if Chicago does make the playoffs last year, this upcoming draft is supposed to be deep, so that 2022 first could be great for them.
Yep.
I like that trade for Columbus. They also acquired Jake Bean from Carolina. I didn't mention that in the Carolina one, but they traded a second-round pick for Jake Bean, who's a young defenseman who really wasn't getting much time in Carolina. Carolina's got a pretty deep defense.
Yeah.
It's the second-round pick that they acquired in the Jones trade was sent to Carolina for Jake Bean.
Gotcha.
So I think that's a good pickup, too. He's a young guy, could grow and become pretty good. Columbus is pretty much in a rebuild. at the moment.
Very, very much so. They're probably the weakest team in the Metro.
I would say so. We'll get to that in a second. And then they traded Cam Atkinson, who is a longtime player on Columbus. They traded him for Jacob Voracek, who hilariously Philly got Jacob Voracek from Columbus originally in the Jeff Carter trade way back when.
That's an old trade.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny that Voracek is going back to Columbus. I think it's kind of a lateral deal for both teams.
Mm-hmm.
Atkinson's more of a goal scorer. Voracek is more of kind of a playmaking winger. So yeah, it's fine. It's kind of like a change of scenery.
Not a bad trade.
Not a bad trade for either team. As far as extensions and re-signings go, they did re-sign Patrick Laine to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Now Laine is going to be a restricted free agent at the end of the year. He was a restricted free agent before he signed this as well. Laine takes a lot of flack because he's kind of a streaky goal scorer. He doesn't really play defense. But, you look around the league, the big goal scorers don't generally play defense. You look at Alex Ovechkin, he doesn't. I mean, he plays more defense now that he's older, but when he was younger, he definitely did not. Evgeny Malkin barely plays defense. Phil Kessel barely plays defense. Sometimes that's not what you should expect from those players. And the old regime in Columbus, and by that I mean John Tortorella, he expected that from every player, and he didn't like that. Laine didn't do that. And
tried to make him something that he's not.
Yeah, so if I don't remember who their new coach is, but if he is just like, hey, go get open and shoot, Laine might have a great season. So they also re-signed Boone Jenner, Alex Tessier, Zach Werenski, who I'll touch on in a second, and Elvis Merzlikins, their other goalie. They're back. It's more of a tandem that they have with their goalies. But Merzlikins got signed to a 2-year, $4 million deal. They also have Jonas Korpisalo as well.
Gotcha.
So speaking of Werenski, his contract is 6 years. I didn't write it down per year, but it's $57.5 million overall, which I think is a little over $9 million a year, which it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it's kind of weird that they did that almost right after they traded Seth Jones, who signed sort of a similar contract, and I don't know. It seems okay right now, but in a few years, if Werenski's not playing up to it, it might look kind of like an anchor.
Right.
But Werenski's still on the younger side, so he might play up to that contract. We'll just have to see. So it's kind of a changing of the guard in Carolina. I feel like this team is going to look not Carolina, Columbus.
Okay,
I feel like this team is going to look a little different. John Tortorella is gone. They traded Nick Foligno last year, who was their captain.
Mm-hmm.
David Savard is also not there anymore. So some of their old stalwart players, they also traded Cam Atkinson, are not going to be there anymore. And this is going to be a younger team. And they might play different. They might play more offensively. Who knows? But as far as their season outlook goes, I don't think they're going to be a terrible team. But I think just based on the division that they're in, I think they're going to be a bottom feeder of this division.
That's what I mean by they're one of the weaker teams in the division.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think they're going to finish last in the division, but I don't know. The Metro is very similar to the Central, where it's very volatile. There's a lot of teams that could very well make the playoffs, or they could beat the shit out of each other enough that only a few of them make the playoffs. So I would say Columbus is probably the one that I would say definitely not make the playoffs, but they're doing a rebuild. It's kind of what they needed to do. One thing that might hang over the team is the tragedy with another one of their goalies, Kiv Lennox, who unfortunately lost his life in a fireworks accident, but he was saving his teammate Elvis Merzlikins and his pregnant wife from being hit by the firework.
Right.
So it's a very sad thing, and I hope it doesn't. Maybe they can use it as kind of
a push,
like a rallying call, but it's very sad. Yeah. So, the best to his family and all of that. It's a very sad situation. They are a very young team. they could overachieve.
Yeah, no one
they could
expects
step
really
before.
anything.
I mean,
from
they
them,
do
so-
have a guy who could be a dynamic goal scorer in Patrick Laine.
Mhm.
But like a bunch of teams that we talked about last time, their center depth is kind of iffy.
Yeah.
I believe their top line center is Jack Roslovic, who's an okay center, but I don't know if I would call him a number one center. Yeah, and then they have Boone Jenner and Sean Corrali. It's not like it's center depth that doesn't really scare you. You know, their defense looks okay, and their goalies have played well. But question mark with center depth, and they're a younger team, so they might do way better than you expect. They might do way worse than you expect. It's it's the follies of young teams.
It's the Metro. No one knows what's going to happen.
It's the Metro.
exciting.
Nobody knows what happens. Oh, I did want to mention that I didn't realize this until I was re-going over teams. Max Domi is out for about 6 months, which that'll hurt. But I mean, that's most of the season.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would hazard a guess that Max Domi probably doesn't play this season, or if he does, it'll be like a little bit.
Right.
But we'll see. If he comes in, I believe he can play center. That might help their center depth. But I think that he's probably out for the majority of the season. But
if not all of it.
If not all of it.
Cool. All right.
You want to go?
I'm down to go.
All right.
First off, we're going alphabetical by team name, which just really mess people up. Going with the Boston Bruins.
Buttery Wins. They might have been first city name too, actually.
Probably, but it's...
That doesn't matter.
Not at all. So, this year,
Wins.
they've made some new free agents, I believe. Nick Foligno that's where he ends up.
That's where he went.
After Toronto, 2 years, $3.8 million a year.
It's not bad.
No. Eric Halla.
Oh, right. I forgot they got Eric Halla.
Linus Ullmark replaces Tuukka Rask. He's 4 years, $5 million a year.
Is Tuukka Rask still a free agent?
He is still considered
But he's
free
pretty
agent.
much said he's not going to... If he plays, he's not going to play for anybody but Boston.
Correct. So he's all but retired.
Well, he's all but retired, yeah.
Thomas Nosek.
Right. Just bottom six guy.
Depth, Derek Forbert. 3 years, $3 million.
Seems like a lot for that guy.
But
I don't know where he slots in, actually.
yeah, I don't know exactly where he slots in. But a lot of their moves were extensions.
Right,
Or-
yeah.
So they
Keeping the band back together. I mean, they were a good team last year.
They extended Trent Frederick,
Right.
depth, winger, center, an
He
agitator.
played pretty well last year, too.
He's a fan favorite.
Yeah.
He gets.
He's
in
an
people's faces.
agitator. Oh, there he is. Oh, he scored a few goals.
He's just a fan favorite. He's an enforcer, kind
Yeah.
of. But they extended Mike Riley,
Oh, right.
3 years, $3 million a year.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Brandon Carlo, they locked him
They
down
needed
for
to
6
get him,
years.
yeah.
Brandon Carlo has unfortunately suffered some injuries these past couple of years, but if he can not get headshotted,
Right.
he's a great defenseman.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And he's only 24. So
Yeah, he's young.
They-
Hopefully he gets these injuries out early in his career, so he can have
And
a
they
nice
don't.
long career.
and they don't affect him long term. But that's $4 million a year for 6 years.
That's pretty good.
That's a good.
That's pretty good.
That's a good
Yeah.
deal. Another big one is Taylor Hall. They kept him.
Oh, that's correct. I forgot.
He is there for the next 4 years, $6
that's
million
right.
a year.
He played really well for them after
Did.
getting that.
He actually took a pay cut compared
How
to
much?
his Buffalo.
Oh,
he
$6
was
million?
He was at $8 million in Buffalo.
Yeah, he did. So
he took a pay cut.
At this point for Taylor Hall, you should want to just play on teams that are
Once you and good,
that are good and will like you to be there.
I mean, he did great on New Jersey. He dragged them kicking and screaming to the playoffs.
That's true. That one year that he weirdly won the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, he deserved it. He dragged them kicking and screaming to the playoffs. But it's good for Taylor to beat a team that wants him, and that's a good team.
It seems like the system that Boston played really clicked with him too.
Yes.
Like he was very good on the power play, if I remember correctly, for them.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's a good place for him.
So last year they were third out of 8.
Boston.
They were third place in the division.
In the East, in the weird East
In
division.
the weird East, they got knocked out by the Islanders in that first round of the playoffs. They are a Stanley Cup or bust team right now.
I think so, but I would say, to me, Boston is kind of on the latter half of that Stanley Cup, kind of where like the Capitals and the Penguins are.
I don't know.
They do have some young guys, but I don't know.
Looking at this team, they are almost one of the best, on paper, one of the best teams in the league.
Well, they just need everybody to play well, because Jake DeBrusk had like a pretty bad year last year, but Taylor Hall kind of made up for that. Like that first line is obviously incredibly dynamic with Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak.
They're one of the teams that are going to go for the
I would say their goalies are their biggest question mark.
Yes, but if they play good defense in front of them.
That's true.
Ullmark played well in Buffalo, and he was getting shell-shocked that entire time.
That's a good point.
Who's to say with a good defense?
I mean, maybe. Yeah, okay. I'll put them in the cup or bust kind of
it's
echelon.
Not, sorry, bust is not the right word. Because
cup or fail, basically.
They're where Tampa was
a few years ago.
Yeah. But 3 years ago, they're removed from being in the Stanley Cup.
That's true.
So
that is also true. They're a
contender.
They're definitely a contender in the East. A team to be worried about.
Yeah, they're going to make the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a matter of 1, 2, or 3.
I mean, unless they get destroyed by injuries, which can happen.
Injuries are the only thing that really slow these guys
Injuries
down.
Are, for every team, the ultimate wild
decider.
Card.
Yeah. All right, moving on to Montreal. They're Boston's best friends.
Back in the same division this year. I'm sure they missed each other so much.
They really did.
Montreal, the crazy Stanley Cup run from last year.
The Canadiens. So, on the free agency side, they signed a lot of depth. Matthew Perrault, Cedric Paquette, Arturi Lankinen, and Chris Weidman. 1-year deals.
Solid depth, though.
Solid depth.
Those guys can do some stuff.
They brought in David Savard.
Yes.
That's 4 years, $3.5 million, which is
that'll help.
Pretty good deal for him, and that will help their defense. And they also had Mike Hoffman.
That's where Mike Hoffman went.
This is where Mike Hoffman ended up. He was a little injured right now, but it's not super serious.
I think a lot of these injuries are 4 weeks. That's not too bad 1 week. Well.
So yeah. Hoffman's good. They were having a little bit of trouble on the power play. Hoffman is a power play specialist.
That'll help definitely. He's a trigger man on there. He likes to shoot.
So
he had a pretty good year last year for I believe he was on St. Louis.
I think so.
Yeah.
Pretty good free agent signings. They extended Joel Armia to a 4-year, $3.5. They got Christian Dvorak.
That's right. That'll help a lot too.
Yep. So, honestly, they were in the playoffs last year. They were 4 out of 7.
And they did something no one would expect.
They were Stanley Cup Finals last year. They went on that run. I think they reverse swept Toronto.
I don't think they reverse swept. I do think they won 3 games in a row. I think Toronto was up 3-1 in that series.
Okay.
I want to say Montreal won game 2 or 3.
Either way,
then they. Oh man, Toronto. Then they shamed Toronto, and then they shamed Winnipeg, and then somehow beat Vegas, and then lost to Tampa Bay. But
they shamed Vegas too.
They beat Vegas in 5 or 6
5
games.
or 6.
Yeah.
It wasn't that
pretty.
close.
Yeah. It's crazy what they did.
So
last
year. the last two seasons were weird. Yeah. Otherwise, they don't make the playoffs.
That's true. Yeah.
So their regular season, I don't see them making the playoffs this year. It's a regular season.
Yeah.
They're not going to make the playoffs. Carey Price is out for 3 months.
Yeah, that's pretty rough. They're going to miss Carey Price. Obviously,
Shea Weber is out indefinitely.
Shea Weber, I guess, much like Brent Seabrook, is retired in all but name.
And I mean, Nashville is got to be pissing themselves right now.
Yeah, so there's a thing with retirement in the NHL. Like we said before, NHL contracts are ironclad. So even if a guy retires, you still have to pay that out.
But there was that rule change.
There was a rule change. I think Shea Weber was the last one to sign one of the crazy long contracts.
12 years.
Before they trimmed those back. Yeah, 12 years at $7.85 million. But what would happen is, if he retired, I believe, since the Predators were the ones that signed him to that contract, they would have to pay that out, and it would go against their cap.
Yeah.
Which that would suck. And the funny thing is,
he was offer sheeted.
He was offer sheeted by the Flyers.
Yeah.
So realistically, it's the Flyers' fault that happened. But if he did actually retire, I don't think he's going to, because this seems to be kind of the thing.
Yes.
With these players, is like, they're not going to play anymore. I guess there's some question with Shea Weber. He's at least not going to play this year, but a lot of people are expecting that was kind of it.
He pushed himself too hard.
He pushed himself too hard and injured himself too hard. But like a lot of things, the same thing happened with Hossa, same thing happened with Seabrook. There's several other players that this is like. So instead of just straight up retiring and like fucking over the team that signed that contract to them, they're just going on long-term injured reserve.
Cutting them some slack. Because
they do have medical issues that are affecting them. And the NHL is allowing them to do this.
Hossa, I believe, became allergic to
his like
sweat
equipment or something. Yeah, something crazy happened with Hossa. And it was very fast, too.
Yeah.
Like, he just developed that, like, all of a sudden.
And that happens.
And it was, like, a horrible, like, he
had
hives all over his
rash.
body. Yeah. But Shea Weber, I believe it's his, like, foot or ankle or something that's, like, super messed up. So, yeah, unfortunately, Shea Weber is gone.
Jake Allen is your starting goalie until Carey Price gets back, which
I don't even know who. Let's see who their other goalies are.
Good or bad?
Yeah, it's going to be Jake Allen and a bunch of young guys rotating in, probably.
So I would say Montreal is outside looking in for the playoffs this year.
We'll have to see. I do kind of like some of the moves that they made. Just looking at their lineup right here. We're on Cap Friendly, by the way, in case anybody's interested in looking these predictive lines up. They don't look bad on paper.
Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield are bright spots.
Dynamic young guys. Cole Caulfield, a lot of people are like, oh my god, he's going to be fantastic. He had a great playoffs.
Both him and Suzuki complement each other very well and had fantastic playoffs. But
then they also added Christian Dvorak. I actually forgot about Jonathan Drouin, who was dealing with mental issues last year.
Right.
But he is, as far as I know, going to be back. So that's a boon.
Yeah.
They got Mike Hoffman. Obviously, they still have Brendan Gallagher, who may or may not have been named their captain.
They should be a fun team to watch.
I
don't know if they're going to make the playoffs,
people, but I would tend to agree with Carey Price injured like that and Shea Weber gone. I mean, David Savard can pick up some of that slack, but I would agree, probably an outside looking in sort of team. But it would not shock me if they shocked everybody and made the playoffs. Yeah.
But that involves probably Toronto failing.
Well, they know how to do that, so
we'll get to that.
We'll get to them. All right. I will continue on. Our next team is the New Jersey Devils. So the Devils, I mentioned Jonathan Bernier a couple teams ago because Carolina didn't sign him after trading for him. He signed in New Jersey for $4.15 million for a couple of years. That seems like a lot for Jonathan Bernier.
Yeah.
But they probably did that because they have Mackenzie Blackwood, who played very well the last couple of years. They have him signed.
Give him some cover.
Yeah, give him a veteran goalie behind him, or to tandem with one of the two. So it's okay. They also signed Dougie Hamilton to his 7-year, $9 million contract.
I don't like it.
I don't really like it either. I think Dougie Hamilton is one of those players because he started with Boston, played well for them.
Calgary didn't work out.
he got traded to Calgary. He was kind of up and down for Calgary, left Calgary, and went to Carolina, where he played fantastically for them. And the last few years, he definitely earned this contract. But the thing is with Dougie Hamilton is I don't know if he's going to fit in with how New Jersey wants to play. Will his offensive numbers continue up?
See, I'm not a huge Dougie Hamilton fan, and it's again, I don't know anything about hockey players personality-wise. This is all strictly play style.
We're not attacking anybody's character other than Anthony DeAngelo.
Other than Tony DeAngelo, I will attack his character all day. For him, he is a great offensive defender.
He's
just too much a defensive liability for me.
Yeah, that's kind of what gives me pause because Carolina has a very good, very deep defense, and I think he fit in well there. But maybe that was because whoever he was tandemed with
could cover
for him and allow him to be more offensively minded. So we're gonna have to see if it works out that way for New Jersey as well. I don't know, but
he earned the price tag.
Yeah,
I
guess.
The years are the question mark.
The years are a lot, yeah. And for a team that also has PK Subban signed for $9 million, although Subban's contract is up after this year. So I guess that they're basically, after this year, just kind of trading Dougie Hamilton for PK Subban. And I don't know which one of them I would say is better than the other one. PK Subban is older by a few years. He's definitely taken a hit he's not the star defenseman he used to be. But again, how much of that he's played for some kind of stinker New Jersey teams the last few years. Not terrible teams, but not making the playoffs. So who knows? Maybe it'll work out for Dougie Hamilton, but I do question. I do question that contract a little bit. They also signed Thomas Tatar. Good old Tater.
That's where he ended up.
For 2 years, $9 million, $4.5 million per year. He didn't really have a great year last year, if I remember correctly. Oh, he had an okay year last year. He was with... he was on Montreal last year.
Yeah.
That's right. So he had an okay year for Montreal. Can he, get back to that with New Jersey? Maybe. He is going to be playing with some dynamic young players. I've said dynamic a bunch of times so far. Some good young players in New Jersey's lineup. They also signed some of their younger guys. Specifically, they re-signed Sharon Govich, who was on a 25-goal pace last year playing with Jack Hughes. So, can that guy build off of that? They didn't sign him for very much. $2 million for a couple of years. So, if he can build off, if he can even keep that pace, that's going to be great.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. They also traded for Ryan Graves from Colorado. Graves was just kind of he's a younger defenseman who wasn't getting a ton of time.
Right.
They traded Mikhail Maltsev, who I believe was a third or fourth line player for them last year, and a 2021 second for Ryan Graves. It gives them good depth. We'll just see again if Ryan Graves fits into their whatever scheme they want to play. It seems like a fine deal to me. They also sent Will Butcher and a 2022 fifth to Buffalo for future considerations. And if you guys don't know, future considerations means nothing. They sent them there for nothing. I think they just have to say that.
Yeah.
Because with the couple of deals that the Coyotes did, it was also for future considerations, but that means nothing. It means they're not going to give them anything for them.
Fun. Here, just take this off our hands.
Yeah, here's his contract. He's okay. So their season outlook, they have a good young forward core. They have Jack Hughes. They have Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. Like I said, Sharon Govich played very well last year. So they have a bunch of good young guys at forward. Now, that could be boom or bust. Their average age is 23.6. And Thomas Tatar and Dougie Hamilton.
That's crazy.
Brought that up, being 28 and 30.
Well, PK Subban.
And PK Subban brings up that average as well.
And Bernier.
So
that's where their age is.
23.6 is their average age. I think that they are the young one of the youngest, if not the youngest team in the league. So that could be really good. That could also they could have some hiccups moving forward as well. Just with a bunch of young guys.
Just some mental lapses.
They make mistakes. Yeah. They're still learning. Jack Hughes had a great year last year. So Nico Hischier, not as much, but Hischier was injured a lot last year. So
they're looking good for the future.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I like what they're doing. Now, they've been
actually
helped along by high draft picks that they've gotten in the lottery, but Hughes, Hischier, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch at center.
I did actually watch their preseason game last night, which was...
Oh, yeah, by the way, we're not going to cover any of the preseason games.
They don't matter.
They don't matter.
They don't matter at all. They were fun.
We'll mention if somebody gets hurt in them. Hopefully nobody gets hurt in them.
Yeah.
So
they were fun to watch.
Yeah. I'll say, again, I don't know how much of an impact Hamilton's going to have. Their defense, I think, is their biggest question mark. Adding Hamilton and Graves theoretically should help, but you never know. It might take them a little while to get acclimated to playing in New Jersey, playing a different style.
Just most of their defenders are young as well.
Yeah, so I think they could surprise a bunch of the other teams in the division.
Very much so.
I know I've seen games where New Jersey has beaten teams in their division that realistically they shouldn't. Like the Capitals or the Penguins or the Islanders, and they're just like, oh, we won 3 out of the 5 games that we played against those teams. It's just like, how?
Right.
It's because they're a young team, and those teams might underestimate them. So they could surprise some people. I would say that they're not likely to make the playoffs, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if they surprised.
Everyone in the Metro can make the playoffs, it seems.
Yeah, it seems. I would say the one team that definitely can't would probably be Columbus. But I'm not even going to say definitely.
They are the least likely.
They're the least likely, and I would say New Jersey is probably the second least likely. But other than that, everybody in this division could probably make the playoffs, and then New Jersey, maybe.
Yeah.
This division it's called the Metrodome for a reason. Whew. It's going to be a bloodbath. Just like the Central.
Yes.
So,
that's why it's my favorite division.
They also have a lot of cap space. Going in, so that might they could be big players at the trade deadline, depending on where they are. If they're a playoff bubble team, they could go out there and grab somebody, make some moves to strengthen them, and get them in the playoffs. So, that's something to keep in mind. There's a few teams that have a lot of cap space. The Coyotes are another team.
Yeah.
But I think
Buffalo's
another one. But with those two teams, I wouldn't put too much stock in them making the playoffs. But I think New Jersey might at least be close,
Yeah.
A few points out.
I mean, you were talking about
5 to 10 points out.
Arizona last time. Mm-hmm. They're trying to build. They're not going to start Buffalo.
I think Buffalo is doing that too. New Jersey is coming out of their rebuild, and I think they're looking strong for the future. So, speaking of strong teams, let's move on to the Islanders. So, the Islanders weren't crazy busy this offseason. Like I mentioned before, they did trade Andrew Ladd and a couple of draft picks to Carolina for quote-unquote future considerations. That was mostly to just get rid of Ladd's contract. I don't believe Ladd was playing last year. Ladd's another one of those guys that I think is all but retired. I don't know that he has injury concerns. I think he might just be bad. But I think he was in the minors a lot last year, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
He's at the end of his career.
Yep.
And a pretty good career for Ladd too, but he's at the end. He can't really keep up anymore. They also traded Nick Leddy to Detroit for Richard Panik. Seems like kind of a meh deal to me for both teams. I mean, Nick Leddy can still play. Panik can still play. Panik's one of those players that's kind of streaky. He'll have one good year, one bad year, one good year, one bad year.
He's also more a defensive guy.
Yeah, so, but sometimes he can pot a goal.
Yes.
Where you're like, wow, I can't believe you just scored that. They re-signed Andy Green, Adam Pelech, Ilya Sorokin, Casey Cizikas, and Anthony Beauvillier. They also re-signed Kyle Palmieri as well. Palmieri was an unrestricted free agent, I think, for like a few weeks. And then, I don't know, he just decided to go back to the Islanders. I can't imagine he didn't have any interest out there to be signed, but maybe he just wanted to go back to the Islanders. The Islanders are a good team.
They seem to have a very good culture as well.
Yes. So, two of their signings, they didn't do too much in free agency. They're more or less minus Leddy and minus... Well, Ladd didn't really play for them that much, but minus Leddy, they're essentially bringing back the same team. The only two real signings they brought in was they brought in Zach Parise and they brought in Zdeno Chara. Now, Parise, you know...
He's back.
From being cut from the Wild in an odd move. Chara, interestingly enough, he is a very old defenseman at this point, 44. But he can still play defense. He's just kind of slow. He is actually going back to the Islanders, which is the team that drafted him. So, that's kind of fun. Neither one of those signings, they're just for 1 year, and the terms were not disclosed. So I imagine they're like under $1 million or right at $1 million. It's kind of weird. They're the only ones that I've seen that
probably like the cap minimum.
Yeah, probably whatever the veteran minimum is for both of them. Yeah. I don't know. That's kind of odd, but they signed them to just be veteran depth. But moving on to the season outlook, they really didn't do anything else. Oh, they lost Jordan Eberle. I knew that they lost someone else, but they lost him in the expansion draft. They're essentially bringing back the same team with a couple little tweaks here. They did lose Eberle, which is some scoring. They added Parise, who could still score a little bit, and maybe he'll play better with the Islanders in a more defensive system. Because he was very good on, Parise was on New Jersey.
Yeah.
Back when he was playing for them in a more defensive system. So maybe he'll thrive. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect him to score a ton. And Chara is just kind of veteran depth on defense.
He can still play as long as he doesn't get distracted beating up a guy.
Yeah, exactly. You can say that about a lot of guys in the league.
Yeah.
Not even older guys.
That's true.
There's just some guys that just get distracted by trying to punish the other team and maybe not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But even so, bringing back the same team, they should definitely be a contender for the top of the division.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely be a contender in the East like they have been the last 2 or 3 years. They're a very good team, very defensively strong. I don't think the loss of Leddy will hurt that too much. Widely around the league, Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock are said to be the best defensive pairing in the league. The one question I would have is, can Varlamov and Sorokin, their 2 goalies, can they repeat what they did last year? They had very good seasons last year, but especially in the first round of the playoffs against the Penguins, they looked a little soft. Both of them did. Now, the Islanders ended up winning that series, but it was less to do with their goaltending and more to do with the Penguins' goaltending that they won that series.
That was 2 years ago.
No, that was this past year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Then
The last few years have been a little confusing in the NHL just because of the pandemic. A lot of things have been confusing.
They went through the Penguins, then they went through Boston.
Yes, and then they lost to Tampa Bay.
Yes,
in the semifinals, we'll call it.
Yes.
So they should be a pretty strong team. Really, the goalies are the only question mark, but if they can play even kind of like they did last year, they'll be fine.
How long is Varlamov banged up for?
Oh, let's see. I don't think it's very long. It's day. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say definitely in the playoffs, unless, injuries rack them. But speaking of injuries, they're getting Anders Lee back, too. Oh. They're getting their captain back.
Ooh, I forgot about that.
That'll definitely help their offense. If you could say one thing was weak about them last year, they didn't score a ton, but they didn't get scored on a lot either, so it kind of averaged out. But if they could start scoring at a better clip, and Anders Lee will certainly help that, they could be a really deadly team. Really, really deadly. So, definitely make the playoffs. Wouldn't shock me if they made the Cup Finals either, honestly. They gave last year's eventual Stanley Cup champion, the Lightning, a rough time in the playoffs. So, so they're going to be a good team. Wouldn't surprise me if they won the Metro. Wouldn't surprise me if they won the East. Wouldn't wouldn't surprise me if they went to the Stanley Cup Finals. So,
Right.
good team. You're up next.
All right. Next up is
and while you do that,
Toronto.
I'm gonna go ahead and
Toronto. So
Toronto.
good old Toronto. Free agency wise, they brought in a lot of depth guys for not a lot of money.
There's a lot of that this year, and probably the next couple of years.
Andre Case, or is it Casey?
Kashe. It's Kashe.
It's There's no H.
I know he is from Eastern Europe.
I looked at that and knew I was going to be wrong. All right, Curtis Gabriel, Nick Ritchie.
Again, we're going to try our best with the
David
names.
Kampf, and Michael Bunting, all depth guys, 1 to 2 years, right there, for $1 million or less. Except for Nick Ritchie, it was 2.5. So
it's not that much.
No, not a lot. Their big free agency signing was Peter Mrazek.
Right.
3 years, 3.8.
And that's to replace Freddie Anderson.
So
I would hazard a guess that Mrazek is probably going to tandem with Jack Campbell.
I would agree. Mrazek's streaky.
Him. I didn't realize they're the same age. Him and Campbell. That's crazy.
Mrazek's just a bit streaky.
Yeah. But you could say that about Freddie Anderson too.
Well, Freddie Anderson got injured a lot, didn't he?
Yeah, but you could call that streaky.
I get both of the Andersons confused. Not gonna lie.
Who's the other one?
The one from Denmark.
That is Freddie Anderson.
No, wait.
He's from Denmark, I think.
Don't worry about me.
Okay.
Don't worry about me.
Is he from Denmark? Let's find out. Yes.
Oh, all right.
So Freddie Anderson is the one from Denmark.
Cool. All right.
I don't know who else.
There might be another Anderson.
There's Laish Anderson, but he's a forward.
Nope. So extensions, re-signings. Let's just go into that before we get a tirade about how I'm wrong again.
Maybe that's how we start every episode. This is what Clay was wrong about this week.
It'll probably be the case.
He said this team won. They actually lost.
Everything blends together. Years, weeks, days.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
It'd be rough.
Time is an enigma.
They brought back Jason Spezza.
Right.
Vet Mem.
That's fine.
Yeah, he's 38. He's been there forever.
Well, he's been around forever. He's been there for, 2 or 3 years at this point.
Yes, he's been around forever.
He's a good veteran presence. He's not going to, he's playing on the bottom line probably.
Brought Wade Simmons back.
That's pretty good. I thought, didn't Wade Simmons play okay for him last year?
Played pretty well. They brought him back for 2 years, a little bit over Bettman.
Yeah, not bad at all.
No. And then Travis Dermott.
Oh, they re-signed Dermott too.
Yeah. They got, trade-wise, Jared McCann.
Right, but then they lost him to Seattle.
That's what I was going to say.
I'll touch on that again in a moment.
He got flipped right to Seattle.
Yeah.
So
from what I heard, that was to protect Alex Kerfoot from getting taken. Basically,
yes, I think so. All right, so they ended up first in the division.
Right.
Last year.
Yes, they did.
I talked about in the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, they did.
I'm not really going to go too much into my thoughts because...
Oh, boy. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about Toronto. Yeah.
They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to choke in the first round. That's it.
Or maybe this will be the first year they don't. I wouldn't count on it.
It won't be because
they'll have to play probably either Boston or Tampa Bay in that first round. So
they have 41% of their cap in 3 players.
Yeah,
for the next 4 years.
Yeah, boy,
they can't field a good team around it.
They're similar to Edmonton, where it's the depth that's really the major problem. Yeah. But really, if you look at their team on paper, they have better depth than Edmonton does, but they always seem to just
But that's not going to work in the playoffs.
Just cough it up. Yeah, no, you're right.
It's not going to work in the playoffs.
Yeah, you're right. Especially against the type of teams they're going to have to be facing off against.
Because those teams have depth.
Yes, they do.
So they lost Morgan Rielly. They lose Morgan Rielly after this year.
Yeah, we'll have to see. That's going to be a big...
It's going to be big
because he if he does end up leaving, somebody's going to throw a lot of money at him.
Exactly.
He's a very good defenseman.
They're not going to be able to afford him.
I don't know, unless they trade someone.
But
Willie Nylander, I don't know. I don't know how much Morgan Riley's going to demand in the off season, but
I think he's going to
get a good chunk.
It'll be a good chunk, and I don't think they can afford him.
Yeah.
It's just
they put all their eggs in like 3 baskets, pretty much.
3 baskets, and Tavares isn't worth $11 million for.
Not at this stage, I wouldn't say in his career.
For what he's been doing.
I think Matthews is worth his contract. I mean, he had 41 goals in 52 games last year. That's insane.
Matthews is worth his.
Mitch
Marner
Marner
is
maybe.
It's hard because he's seen what Matthews is doing and wants that same money.
Yeah.
So that's
well,
hard.
part of it is as well, like, I'm sure Toronto, nobody foresaw the pandemic coming. And I'm sure Toronto, after they signed those contracts, was like, oh, well,
the cap will grow. It'll be fine.
The cap will grow. We're on the cusp of a new TV deal, which in a normal time would mean that the cap would go up by quite a lot, because the new TV deal is quite a lot more than what they had before. But because of all of the money they lost during the pandemic, not having people in the stands,
with all they have, they're not going to do anything with it. They're just not. Yeah. I have no faith in Toronto whatsoever.
They haven't given anybody a reason to have faith. They haven't even won one playoff round.
No.
And I mean, this harkens back to like even years ago when they coughed up that 3-1 lead against Boston. When we were in college.
Yep.
And that was horrible. They did it again last year. They lost to Boston the 2 years before that. And it's just one of those things. And they got, in the pandemic playoffs, they got knocked out by somebody in the first round too. I can't remember who it was. And it's very similar. Them and Edmonton are very similar, except Edmonton has at least won a playoff round or two.
The thing about Toronto is when they get to that third win, afterwards they're playing to
it's
not
like they
lose.
Get way too nervous.
They get scared. And if you play
sucks because
if you play to not lose, you're gonna lose.
You're gonna lose, which sucks because I like Austin Matthews.
I like
Mitch
a lot
Marner.
of their team.
I like a lot of their team, but they just keep choking in the playoffs.
Yeah,
it's just
they don't have anybody who has the experience to get them over that hump.
Yeah, even Tavares really doesn't have that experience because even when he was with the Islanders,
they were a bad team.
They were a bad team most of the time, and then they did win a playoff round. I think here or there in the Islanders when he was on the Islanders, but he didn't win that much on them. So
it's
sad, and I want them to do better. They're the biggest market, and the Canadian TV and the Canadian writers will push how they're the best team and whatever, but they keep choking in the playoffs, and it's just like, ugh.
They also, I don't want them to win just because of the Toronto media.
Yeah.
And that's not the players' fault at
No,
all.
that's not the players' fault by any means.
All that pressure that the media is putting on them probably doesn't help.
Oh, I'm sure it's a huge amount. I mean, look at what happened to Phil Kessel after he left. They vilified him in Toronto media.
And they're probably going to do the same thing to Austin Matthews.
And then he got traded to the Penguins, and he won back-to-back Stanley Cups. And it's just like, I hope they don't do that to Matthews, but if they do and he leaves, and then he's just really good on whoever he goes to, what are you doing?
He's already a star in Toronto. He's not. First of all, if he does get any better, that's mind-boggling. But
I mean, how many goals was he on track for last year? He had 41 goals in 56 games. That's 70 goals or something.
Some stupid amount. All right.
God.
Next up is Tampa
60,
Bay.
but still.
Next up is Tampa Bay.
All right, Tampa.
All right, so
champs.
They have Brian Elliott as their backup goalie.
He's not going to be playing that much. Honestly, is the thing. Vasilevsky's going to play most of the game.
100%. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare for
one of the French guys in the league. Alex Tessier is the other French guy in the league.
He's coming out.
Legit from France.
He's coming from Vegas.
Right.
Corey Perry's doing the whole if you can't beat him, join him.
I mean, hey, he got a Stanley Cup ring out of them last year. Oh, no. He was on Montreal. Oh,
he was on Montreal.
He was in the finals. He was on
Montreal. He was on Dallas the year before that.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Can't beat him, join him.
You'll join forces.
Ross Colton, Cowfoot, Zach Bosnian.
Okay.
Those were their
Patrick Maroon is who I was thinking
depth
of.
guys. Yeah. They're depth guys that they signed in the free agency.
Yeah, I mean they have some major cap woes.
Extensions. They extended Braden Point.
They did.
Not this year. Next year he starts 9.5.
Right.
And I know I just talked a bunch of shit on Toronto, but
for giving guys a lot of money.
Tampa's in the same position.
Yeah, but here's the thing: Tampa Bay has just won 2 back-to-back Stanley Cups, so they can do whatever the fuck they want. Honestly, I'm sorry, they won back-to-back cups.
That's true.
And everybody was raving when the Penguins did that 5 years ago, and then Tampa Bay did it, and everybody's like, "Oh, all right,
yeah."
Maybe it is doable. They could win it again this year.
I don't see them winning it.
They're definitely weaker.
The door is not shut. They lost a lot of guys.
Yeah, they're definitely weaker
due
than
to
they are last year.
Cap restrictions.
Yeah.
They even Braden Point, Kucherov, and Vasilevsky all being on $9.5 million. That's still
that'll hurt. Yeah.
That's still $2.5 million less than those guys on
true. Those guys on Toronto.
Those 3 guys on Toronto. That ends up being math is hard for me right now.
It's less.
$7 million less.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. That's crazy.
So you can move that $7 million into somewhere else.
And I mean, do they have anybody? Well, Palat might be gone after this next year as well. He's the only major piece that they might lose, but Andre Vasilevsky is getting $9.5 million as well. So
that's what
he deserves it though.
That's who I counted in the 3 players.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha, sorry.
So Victor Hedman's making a lot of money as well.
Honestly, Victor Hedman's making less money than he probably should.
That's that $7 million
That's true.
They hit.
That's true.
He's making a little bit over that, but
he's
making almost 8. But that's that $7 million that I was talking about. Vasilevsky, on the other hand, so what they're probably going to do going on, because he's on that team until 2030?
Vasilevsky?
Or is it
2028?
2028, okay.
Close enough.
So that's 9.5 till 2028.
Well,
so they're probably just going to do veteran goalies as backups.
Probably.
Because Brian Elliott is...
Well, he's making
under $1 million.
Yeah, under $1 million.
So that's not... Here's the thing. It's Brian Elliott. He just left Philadelphia, so he's probably going to go off. Philadelphia's bad with goalies.
That's true. We'll get to Philadelphia in just a second with their goalies.
So I don't hate that move. Because
it's
a goalie not in Philadelphia.
Vasilevsky is going to play most of the games.
Unless he gets hurt.
Then hopefully he doesn't.
Trouble.
Again, we don't want anybody to get hurt. But maybe Tony DeAngelo. But, yeah. So, I mean, they're, again,
It's...
They're a good team. They're going to be a good team again.
I talked a lot of crap on Toronto, and Tampa Bay is in the same exact position. They have the cups.
They have the championships, so
and
they can get away with it.
And they besides getting embarrassed by Columbus,
a few years ago,
3 years ago, they were already at the cusp of a Stanley Cup.
That's true. Yeah,
they were in finals. They were a good team. They were a good team. So no one was seeing them as choking even except for 3 years ago.
Yeah, everybody called it out then, but then they did what they
Then they responded.
You really get past the choking moniker once you win a fucking.
That's all it is.
One.
That's all it is.
Nobody's calling the Capitals chokers anymore.
No
they
one's
got their one.
About St. Louis.
No one's talking about St. Louis anymore being chokers because they got their one. So yeah.
Heck, getting past the second round. A lot of people up with
Tampa Bay is going to be good again.
They're going to be good again.
Maybe not quite as good as they were the last couple of years.
They're
but
in a weaker division. They're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They're competing with Boston for it. Like, that's just what it is.
Absolutely. Say definitely they're going to make the playoffs, maybe win the division.
I don't think they're going 3-peat.
You never know.
I don't think they're going 3-peat, but that
God willing. That starts to be boring after a while.
That door is not shut.
Yeah.
It's still a possibility.
It starts to be boring after a while, the same team winning all the time. So.
Yeah.
Even if they are your team, it starts to get boring,
100%.
Yes.
I want to see teams that haven't won it before.
Yeah. So let's move on to the New York Rangers. So the Rangers, they did some puzzling things kind of similar to what Carolina did. It's puzzling for different reasons. So they traded a 7th-round pick for Barclay Goodrow from Tampa Bay. Then they re-signed him for 6 years, $3.64 million per year.
How old is he?
Again,
28. Okay.
He's 28. So again, the money isn't really the questionable part. The 6 years is the questionable part. But I don't know. Maybe he'll play really well for them. But like I said in the last episode, once you get over 5 years on a contract, I start to think it's too long. 5 years is, unless it's like a superstar player, like Svechnikov signed an 8-year deal.
Yeah,
I would say that's totally fine.
He's
like also
22.
21. Yeah, 21. He's 21, 22. So going towards more of the puzzling moves that they did, like I mentioned for St. Louis, they traded Pavel Buchnevich to St. Louis for Sammy Blais and a 2nd-round pick. Now the 2nd-round pick is nice. Sammy Blais is kind of like a bruiser player.
He's like an AHLer.
Well, he played for St. Louis last year. He had 8 goals. Like, he can score some, but, like, he's more of, like, a bigger body to play. And we'll touch on that again in a moment. So they traded more skill for more size with that. So I always find that to be questionable.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, they did cut DeAngelo.
That's a good move.
That's a good
move.
Because he's just a general piece of shit. So we won't touch on that anymore. But then they signed or traded for even more size and toughness. They traded for Ryan Reeves. They traded a 3rd-round pick for Ryan Reeves,
which is too much.
And then re-signed him. They signed Patrick Nemeth. They signed Jared Tenorti. So I don't know how much Jared Tenorti's going to play. I don't know how much Patrick Nemeth is going to play. But
how much is Ryan Reeves going to play?
I don't know how much Ryan Reeves is going to play. But they seem to sign these guys just because they're big, tough players. And part of me thinks that it was in response to what happened with them and Tom Wilson at the end of the year last year. Now, in case anybody doesn't know, there was a huge brawl in one of the late games last season. I believe
4 games left in the season.
Yeah, 4 or 5 games left this season. The Rangers actually, I think the game before had just been eliminated from the playoff contention. And maybe it was that game. I don't remember. But it was very recent that they had gotten eliminated. And there was a brawl at the end of the game, or towards the end of the game, that mostly involved Tom Wilson and a bunch of the players from the Rangers, where Wilson kind of questionably hit somebody, and then he sort of, I think he punched Buchnevich on the ice.
He punched Buchnevich while he was
he was down.
He punched him in the back,
which is a huge no-no in the league. Like that's just like kind of a shit. It's a shitty thing.
It's a shitty thing to do, but it happens all the time.
I know, but it's not right. You shouldn't punch somebody that's down on the ice.
That's not the argument. All right.
So that happened, and then I believe that was the impetus to everything else happening.
Panarin and Strome.
And then mostly Panarin got into the fight with Tom Wilson. Wilson pulled his hair, kind of threw him violently to the ice. Thankfully, Panarin was very close to hitting his head on the ice. Yeah. He didn't, but he did mess his knee up, he messed something up that took him out for the rest of the year.
His knee was already questionable. They shut him down.
He tweaked it even further, and so they just shut him down for the rest of the year. The rest of the year didn't really matter for the Rangers anyway. But so now they have all these guys.
There was that incident, and then the very next game, they played Washington again.
Yeah. And then
Wilson should have been suspended at least a game.
And then Tom Wilson got quote-unquote hurt in that game.
That game,
and then they pulled him out of that game.
That game started with a line brawl immediately.
Right.
So, like...
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. It just seems like... And I'm sure that they'll say in the press that those are not related to the Tom Wilson incident, but I think they are. Sammy Blais, at least you can be like, he can score some, but the other ones, Nemeth, Tenorti, Reeves, they don't really bring anything other than toughness.
They fired their GM.
They did fire their GM and instated Chris Drury, who was their assistant GM.
Yes, no, they wanted Drury in the first place, but like...
But then this also reeks of like their owner kind of meddling a little bit with what they were doing. If you know anything about the Knicks. Yeah, it's the same guy, yeah. Before this, I really liked what they were doing with their rebuild. They just like the Devils, they lucked out and got some high lottery picks. But then they signed Panarin and stuff, which helps accelerate their rebuild. But then this happens, and now they get these bigger guys to help maybe negate Tom Wilson. I don't know. I don't love it. I don't love what they're doing. I don't love trading Buchnevich, first of all.
Buchnevich could fight. Like...
Yeah, he's not like a little guy. But still, I don't know. So I don't love what they're doing there. They did re-sign their, I guess, supposed starting goalie, Igor Shesterkin, to a 4-year, $5.6 million per. I guess he's the starter. I've also heard rumblings that Georgiev wants out of there because Georgiev is a fairly good, younger goalie. They're the same age. But Georgiev wants to be the starter, but they also have Shesterkin, who is also a pretty good goalie, who's played a bit better than Georgiev. So I don't know. That's only a rumor. I haven't heard it a lot.
Right.
So we'll see about that moving forward. But right now, that's their tandem of two goalies that are both 25 years old, who are both fairly good.
Yeah.
As far as their season outlook, I don't really know. I would say that they could possibly fight for a playoff spot, but, these moves with size instead of skill, I don't know how much those guys really play, so maybe it won't have that big of an impact.
Right.
But if they want to make the playoffs, their two big young guns really need to do something. And those two are Kakko and Lafreniere. So those are their two... Lafreniere was number 1 overall a couple of years ago, and Kakko was 2 or 3 overall.
Yeah.
The year before that. Now those guys scored 9 goals and 12 goals, respectively, last year.
I remember Kakko having a rough rookie year.
He's had a rough rookie and sophomore year,
but had a rough sophomore year, but still improved on his rookie year.
Yeah.
So.
And as the season went on, Lafreniere started playing better as well, but it's one of those things, it's 12 goals and 9 goals from those guys. Yes, it was a shortened year, so Lafreniere was probably on pace to get 15 to 20.
Yeah.
That still isn't enough for a top-line winger.
Right. Especially, they think he was drafted.
You went number 1 overall. You got
in 2020.
You gotta.
Last year was his rookie season, but.
Oh, there it is right there. Kakko was number 2 in 2019.
So.
It was your rookie season, so I'll give you a little bit of slack on that one, but they need more from those two guys.
Yes, 100%.
For them to do anything, they need more from those guys. And
that will develop as they get older and are able to bulk up, but
sure.
They're 19 and 20 right now,
so they're both teenagers, or Kakko is 20, so he was just barely not a teenager.
But they're still
anymore,
children.
They're young, so they have plenty of room to grow, but if the Rangers want to make the playoffs this year, they need those guys to take a pretty large step forward.
100%.
And not even I'm not talking 40 goals. I'm talking if these guys can score 20 to 25 goals apiece, that'll be huge for the Rangers. And that'll make a huge difference.
Also, just 20, 25 goals plus 20, 25 assists.
That would be perfectly fine. Of course, they have Artemi Panarin, who will certainly help those guys with their points as long as he stays healthy.
Zibanejad's a bad
Zibanejad
man.
is also there. Zibanejad had a great year last year. So if he can keep that up, that'll be great for them.
I think half of his goals were just against the Capitals.
And then, of course, they also have Adam Fox, who won the Norris last year.
Yep.
And he's a very good young defenseman. But the one thing that gives pause about Adam Fox and Mika Zibanejad is both of their contracts are up after this year.
Oh.
I'm not 100% sure how much cap space the Rangers have, but they need to re-sign those guys. Because this is another team whose center depth after Mika Zibanejad is a little questionable. Now, they have Ryan Strome.
Who played well.
But is he top line caliber? I would say probably not. And then they cannot lose Adam Fox.
No,
especially not after what he did last year. And he is only 23 and he's won a Norris.
Yeah, he's going to be good for a long time.
If he even gets close to that again, he's going to demand a lot of money. And if I was the Rangers, I would give it to him.
Yep.
Just because he played very well. And then, their defense could be really good. Keandre Miller played really well last year, who we mentioned a little bit before. They also have Jacob Trouba, who could play better. He's getting $8 million a year. So if they have to give Adam Fox like a big chunk of money, which they probably will, Trouba might be the guy that they maybe look to move. But we'll see. That's next offseason kind of problem. I would say possible playoff. But again, they're in the Metro. Metro might cannibalize itself, so they might not. I would say they're a playoff bubble team.
Yeah.
If that's an accurate statement about them. But if Kakko and Lafreniere can take big step forwards, they could really solidify that playoff spot.
Oh, 100%. They're a team that's exciting for the future.
Absolutely. I like what they did. And now, again, they kind of lucked out with the... Some of the Metro teams have really lucked out with that draft lottery recently.
To me, they are a two-step forward team, one step back with some of these things, but again, that's still forward progress.
Yeah, again, I mean the size that they got. I mean, these are guys that are going to play fourth line minutes,
Tenorti and Reeves,
third pairing minutes. I don't think Tenorti's going to play that much. They might just have him in their back pocket for a game, let's just say against Washington and Tom Wilson. But so maybe it's not quite that bad. But there were just sort of things you could have used that money for something else maybe.
I mean, last year Reeves on the ice hurt Vegas.
Yeah. So. Now I would assume Ryan Reeves is going to get fourth line minutes, which is in this league usually under 10 minutes of ice time. So, and if he starts playing that bad, I mean, I would hope that their coach is smart enough to just yank him.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have to see. So, moving on, let's talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. So, their major transaction this year, or this offseason, they were a little bit more busy than some of the other Metro teams. So, they traded for Ryan Ellis, I mentioned when we talked about Nashville. They traded Philippe Myers and Nolan Patrick for it. I think it's a fairly good trade for the Flyers, who needed kind of a new look on their defense. Their defense really let them down last year. They did not make the playoffs last year, where the Flyers are a weird team.
They make the playoffs every other year.
Yeah,
so this
really
is the year
that
they're supposed to make it.
Theoretically, we'll see. But I think it's a pretty good trade. I mean, Nolan Patrick had many injury problems. Got traded to Nashville, and then Nashville flipped him to Vegas for Cody Glass. So, I'm sure they wish Nolan Patrick all the best, but he was kind of a bust in the Flyers. So solidifies that defense. But now this next trade is a little bit more puzzling. They traded for Rasmus Ristolainen, whose numbers are quite a lot worse than Ryan Ellis, and worse than Robert Haig, the guy that they traded him for. They traded Robert Haig, a first-round pick, and a 2023 second for Rasmus Ristolainen. That's so much for Ristolainen. Oh man, just a lot. Ristolainen has had at least 2 really bad years. Now Buffalo has been very bad, so I wouldn't put it all on him. Maybe he'll bounce back with the Flyers, but that's especially that first-round pick seems like a lot. For him. So, I mean, hey, if he bounces back, maybe the Flyers don't care. Maybe that first-round pick doesn't matter. We'll have to see. I mentioned,
first-round pick could be anybody.
Could be Rasmus Ristolainen.
Could be Rasmus.
That's always my favorite thing that I see people comment on trading draft picks. Like I mentioned with Columbus, they traded Voracek for Atkinson. Atkinson has a little bit more scoring touch than Voracek does. Voracek has been on the Flyers for a really long time, so it's kind of weird to see
him in another jersey.
Him go somewhere else, but it's kind of trading a little bit more scoring punch for a little bit less playmaking. But they have other guys that can pick up that playmaking, like Giroux and Couturier and guys like that.
Yeah.
Then they went out and signed Keith Yandle and Martin Jones for, I think, just above vet minimum. I think it was about $900K for Yandle, and I want to say Martin Jones was like maybe $2 million. But Martin Jones was just 1 year. Keith Yandle was just 1 year. It's just for some veteran defense, a veteran goalie to play behind Carter Hart. Speaking of Carter Hart, they re-signed him for 3 years for just a smidge under $4 million, which seems like a pretty good deal for him. But this is sort of a bridge deal. If I'm Carter Hart, I'm looking at this deal as I'm going to play my heart out for this deal. Oh, I didn't even mean to do that.
I know you didn't.
I'm going to play my ass off in this deal and earn
that money.
But he had a really bad year last year, so we'll have to see what happens with that. They also re-signed Travis Sondheim for a couple years, just under $5 million, not bad. Then they re-signed Sean Couturier for 8 years, $7.75 million, which seems like a lot, but for a guy like Couturier, he probably earns that much. The last re-signing, which is a little bit questionable, is Joel Farabee for 6 years, $5 million per year. Just like with Kirill Kaprizov, they're paying Farabee for 1 year of production, which is always a little bit questionable to me. Let's move on to the Flyers season outlook. As Clay mentioned earlier, the Flyers are a weird team because they make the playoffs every other year. And so technically this year should be the year they make the playoffs. On paper, they're a good team. I would think they could make the playoffs. Whoops, I'm on the wrong page. There we go. On paper, they should make the playoffs. Ryan Ellis should have an impact on this defense. It should be better, but, how will Ristolainen actually help with that? Or will he impede that impact?
Who's to say?
Who knows? Yandle, I guess, could have an impact too, but he's, an older guy at this point. But he could have a positive impact as well. They do have a really reworked defense at this point. They added in Ellis, they added in Ristolainen, they added in Yandle. So that defense should look different. But will it be better? I don't know. Can Carter Hart have a bounce back year? Because he did have a pretty not great year last year.
No,
for him anyway. The 2 years previous, he had a couple pretty strong seasons. Everybody was getting real hype on him, but then last year he kind of I wouldn't say crashed and burned, but definitely took a step back.
Yeah.
So if he could play better, then I think they could definitely make the playoffs. But I'll put them in that same area that the Rangers are, as kind of more of a bubble playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there are some contenders in this division that I would say are definite playoff teams, I guess unless they take major steps back, in Carolina and the Islanders. And then there's some more bubble-ish teams. There's some stronger bubble teams and some weaker bubble teams.
Other than the Islanders and Carolina, I would say every team is a bubble team.
Yeah. But we'll get on to the last two members of this division in just a second. But I will let Clay go.
All right, back to the Atlantic.
Oh, 1 second.
That's such a nice sound. All right, so Florida Panthers.
The Panthers.
Playing out of Miami, which I did not know that for the longest time.
Yeah, are they in Miami?
They're in Dade County.
They are in Dade County?
Yeah.
Okay. That's crazy.
Again, I learned that 3 years ago.
It's so weird.
Before researching for this. I knew...
It's always so strange that there's a that hockey is a game that is played on ice, and there's 2 teams in Florida where there's barely any ice, 3 teams in California where there's barely any ice, and a team in Phoenix.
Don't forget Vegas.
Oh, and Vegas.
More desert teams.
And Dallas. Yeah. It's so strange. It's just strange. But some of those teams have big followings. Like Tampa Bay has a very strong following. Dallas does too.
Most of those teams have won a cup before. More recently, a Canadian team. So
that's true. That is true. Poor Canada. All right. Anyway, the Panthers.
All right. First up is they brought Jumbo Joe in to their team.
They did. I mean,
vet min, but Jumbo Joe.
I mean,
he's there.
If they gave him anything other than the vet min, I would definitely question that. He could still play. He could still give some assists and all that. He's never really been a huge goal scorer, at least not like in the latter stage of his career. But he can still play.
He can rack up those assists.
Yeah.
They some of the depth guys are Mana Maxim or
who?
Don't worry about that.
Okay.
He's kind of a scratch.
Okay.
He's low.
There he is. Oh, no. Anyway, just move on. A guy.
A guy. He's a winger. Millionaire. And the biggest one is we touched on. We traded for Sam Reinhart.
Right. We haven't touched on him yet, but
we mentioned him that he got traded.
We haven't done Buffalo yet.
You're right.
I believe he got traded at the trade deadline last year, didn't he?
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, they re-signed him.
They re-signed Sam Reinhart. I have been looking at a lot of Buffalo stuff, so that's why I thought we talked
get
about
confused every once in a while.
I get confused easily.
No, he was traded in the offseason to Florida.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
He got Sam Reinhart for 3 years, $6.5 million.
Oh, I'm thinking of Sam Bennett, I think.
Sam Bennett, they did extend.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that. So, re-signings, extensions, Gustav Forsling, defense, Anthony Duclair, Sam Bennett, Brandon Montour, and Carter. I'm not even going to try. Begins with V.
Verhaeghe is how it is said. Yes.
Thank you.
Hockey has the best names.
I love it.
But some of them are really confusing to look at.
I've watched soccer for the last 15 years.
That's true.
I can get a lot of them, but some of them are...
One that always throws me for a loop is Patrick Laine. And his name is Laine, so it should be said Lane.
Mm-hmm.
At least in English, that seems like how it should be said. But he is Finnish, so they have their own rules. So,
look, English
is a dumb language anyway.
English is... There's Derby County. Derbies are spelled with an E. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
All right. So
Connor
back
Verhaeghe. That's a good sign.
3 years, $4 million. Brandon Montour is 3 years, $3.5. Sam Bennett's 4 years, $4.5. I don't know about him.
Sam Bennett did play well for them last year, I believe. Once he was the one I was talking about that got traded at the trade deadline.
Sam Bennett came from Calgary.
Yeah.
He is kind of like a Tom Wilson, where
he's a little bit more of an agitator.
He's a good hockey player, and then he goes and does some dumb shit and gets suspended.
Right.
Which is what happened in the playoffs last year, which really cost Florida.
Yeah. So we'll see if he does something like that again. I think that Sam Reinhart edition.
Sam Reinhart's going to be...
That's pretty good. He had 25 goals last year.
They got him for kind of an AHLer.
Yeah.
And they get a first. No. They lost a first? They gave a first for and an AHLer for Reinhart. Yes. And that's correct. A conditional first. And the thing is, if that pick is in the top 10... then it's next year's.
So it's another lottery-protected pick.
Yeah.
Kind of similar.
I kind of don't understand why Buffalo would allow that.
I think they're just hedging. I think at least the Panthers are hedging their bets with that one, but I doubt it would be a top 10 pick.
I don't think they're going to be a top 10 pick.
Unless they're racked with injuries, I doubt it.
So, thoughts last year, they placed second in that division.
They did. They had a very good year last year.
They were a high-scoring team. They were super fun to watch. They've made some really good additions. They've locked down some good players.
Oh, yeah.
They are a team to look out for. They're going to be fun.
Yeah.
They're just going to be fun.
They're another one of those teams that I hope does well because they have a lot of players that I like.
The question is Bobrovsky.
Yeah, he's really got to play better.
Not living up to that $10 million a year right now.
Yeah, I mean his numbers aren't horrible from last year, but the $10 million is a lot.
But last year they had Chris Driedger.
That's
now
true.
they have Spencer Knight. Is Spencer
Who
Knight?
I believe is going to be a rookie this year.
Is Spencer Knight going to be able to live up to Chris Driedger?
We'll have to see.
We'll have to see.
He was weirdly 4-0 last year.
So if Bobrovsky could get back to his form that got him that deal,
from Columbus,
then it'll be fine.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
How he played last year was woof.
Yeah, he played pretty.
All right.
I mean, he lost his starting position to Driedger at a certain point, I think.
So Panthers were a team that really pressed the Lightning.
Mm-hmm.
But losing Ekblad really hurt them.
He should be back this year.
He should be back this year. Hopefully, he doesn't have any lingering injuries.
Yeah, I mean, he's listed as healthy, so
hopefully, he doesn't have any lingering effects. Ekblad was a former first-round pick,
first overall pick, right?
First overall pick, and a lot of people were saying he wasn't a bust, but wasn't living up to that potential.
Yeah.
This last year, he
played
turned
very
that corner.
well. Yes, he did.
So if he can keep playing that, Florida's going to be sitting pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, they don't get racked by the injury bug.
Yeah, I think that was part of the problem last year, certainly.
In the playoffs, it was.
Yeah.
So hopefully, they don't get racked by the injury bug, and they're able to take a step forward from how they played. And hopefully, they can make a playoff.
Take a step.
Make a Stanley Cup push. Because they're a team that, on paper, looks like they can make a run for it.
Absolutely. The one thing that's going to be a little scary going into next offseason is that Alexander Barkov is going to be a UFA. I'm sure they're talking to him about a contract extension,
100%.
but he's going to want a lot.
He's only on
5.9 right now. He is over a point per game last year, over a point per game I think the last couple of years. He is good offensively. He is good defensively. He's a guy that's going to demand. He is absolutely the quintessential number one center.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy you want anchoring your top line. So, I think Florida will probably pay him what he wants, but it remains to be seen what that number is going to be.
Right.
So that's just something to look out for them.
They're fun to look at. Hopefully they're able to make a step forward.
Right. Just wanted to see real quick what their cap looks like next year. Come on. That's recapture penalties. Oh, here we go. So next year, they'll have $14 million in cap space next year, so they should be able to sign Barkov. He's not going to get $14 million.
But that's just what they have to work.
But that's what they have to work with. So I think if I had to guess a contract, $9 million, something like that, is what Barkov is going to want. If maybe 10.
Yeah, depending on looking around the league, that's not bad.
And in a few years, when the cap starts to go up again, that'll probably look good.
Probably should pay that.
Oh, I think they absolutely should. Somebody's going to pay that.
Yeah,
if they don't, because he's a UFA. He's not even an RFA.
Right.
So somebody will pay that amount of money to him.
So they should make the playoffs.
I would think so. Yeah.
They can push for the division.
Yeah, I would say they're definitely one of the three strongest teams in that division,
100%.
with the Lightning and Boston as well.
And again, they finished over Boston last year, but again, it's a shortened season.
That's true. So we'll have to see. They could push for the division. Tampa Bay's definitely weaker. Boston's another year older. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
I'm pulling for you, Florida.
Get that first cup.
Florida's always another one of those teams, like we talked with the Coyotes, that if they're even a little bad and they're attendance isn't good. People are like, oh, move them.
Move 'em. Yep.
Like, move them to where? You want them to go to Quebec City, where their attendance will also be terrible? Or go to Hartford, where their attendance will also be terrible?
I have a soft spot for Florida only just because I had one of their inaugural T-shirts as a child.
Oh, really?
For
some reason.
For
some reason.
I think my parents got it for me because I liked animals and they looked cool.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It was a panther jumping at you.
I miss that logo. I wish they would bring it back. Their logo now is like okay, but like the one with it where it's the panther like breaking the stick and like jumping at you and shit. That was a cool ass logo.
It was a super cool logo.
Panthers, you'll never hear this, but bring back that logo. All right, moving on.
At least Arizona has done what we wanted.
That's true. Those Kachina jerseys are pretty cool. Bring back the purple.
Bring back the purple Space Coyote.
Somebody needs to use purple more in this league. Purple is such a good color.
Those jerseys sold out last year.
I know. Because they're dope.
I almost got one.
Yeah, I kind of thought about it too. I was like, who could I get a jersey of?
It could just be a blank back.
That's true.
All right. Now on to Detroit.
Yeah. Detroit.
Who is in the Atlantic.
Yeah, that is. I think people get confused about what division Detroit's in sometimes.
That's fair. They got moved. But here's the thing. If you drive through Canada, they're only 8 hours away from Boston by car.
That's true. Yeah,
so they're not that far.
I mean, I think the major reason they did that was because Detroit was one of those teams that was... They had to travel so much when they were in the Western Conference because they were, I think... Other than maybe Columbus, because Columbus used to be in the Central as well. Other than Columbus, they were the farthest east Western Conference team. So it's a better fit for them to be in the East. But I know a lot of people miss that rivalry with like the Blackhawks and especially the Avalanche too.
Yeah. So Red Wings, the free agent signings were Giovanni Smith, Carter Rowney, Sam Gagner, Jordan Osterley.
Gagne. Sam Gagne.
I knew it.
It's that G. That G got you. Goddamn French Canadians.
It's the R too.
Yeah. Goddamn French ass names.
I knew it. I actually
That's a French ass name, Yvonne.
Back of your head, ridiculous. Adam Ern, they extended him.
Ernie.
I don't care. Pius Suter, which poor guy's name, Pius.
Yeah, that's a. I mean, he's from Switzerland, so maybe that doesn't like have the same context, but like it's such an unfortunate first name.
And then Philippe Hronik.
Hronik. Yeah, you got it.
Said that one. That was 3 years, 4.5.
That's pretty good. He's one of their better defensemen.
So they did a lot of extensions and re-signings.
Yeah.
Tyler Bertuzzi was 2 years for 0.75. I mentioned Ernie. Shut up, Bert.
No! My one weakness.
Jacob Vrana, 3 years, 5.25, which is
he played really well for them.
That change of scenery was good for him. Gustav Lindstrom, another 2 years, but less than a mil, so not bad.
Yeah. It's always funny to see another Lindstrom on Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Mark Stahl.
Oh, they signed Mark Stahl.
Re-signed.
Oh, they re-signed Mark Stahl. Excuse me.
Just a year, $2 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay for Mark Stahl. I mean, he's like...
Rasmussen.
Questionable.
And we mentioned extending or like signing Nedeljkovic.
Yeah. That trade's so puzzling. It's a good trade for Detroit.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And then we mentioned they got Nick Leddy for Richie Panik, and then they kept 50% of Panik's contract.
Oh, I didn't mention that.
And then they also gave up a second, which we said.
Right.
I don't hate that trade at all.
Nick Leddy could still play.
Yeah, and then Panik is streaky with years, so makes sense.
It's fair.
They are in a rebuild. They're in the middle stages of a rebuild.
I would even hazard a guess that they're maybe starting to get in the latter stages of it.
Yeah.
They have good young guys. Bertuzzi's a good player. Dylan Larkin is only 25. I believe he's their captain.
Yep.
Michael Rasmussen's a good player.
So
Philippe Zadina.
They were 7 out of 8 last year in the division.
Right. I think people may be expecting them to not make the playoffs, but probably take a step forward, kind of like the Kings.
I don't think they're going to push for the playoffs.
Nah, I wouldn't think so.
But
stranger things have happened.
They're going to play spoiler for somebody. They're going to
ruin someone's day. I would think, yeah.
And isn't that all you can ask for?
Especially with a rebuild, yeah.
In a rebuild,
if you could, if one of your main rivals, you could just you take that game at the end of the season that would lock them into the playoffs. Just be like, beautiful. Whoops, we took those points.
That's all you can really ask for. But that's all.
So I mean,
they're looking promising in the future.
For the future,
but right now, I don't see much from
probably not the playoffs. Just with how the East is, the East is kind of top heavy with their teams. So but they could like we were talking about with the Kraken, they could tick off some points
100%.
from if not beating them outright, then maybe taking an overtime loss point.
Yeah,
the loser point, as some people call it. If you don't know, the way that the NHL is set up, a win of any kind is 2 points. A loss in regulation is 0 points. And a loss in overtime or shootout is 1 point, which is kind of confusing. It doesn't really make sense.
No, you took them to... They couldn't beat you, so you
get
a point.
That would mean it would logically make sense that a win should be worth 3 points then. I don't know. I don't think they'll ever change that, but it would just make more sense if a win was worth 3 points. Like a regulation win was worth 3 points and an overtime win was worth 2 points. They'll never change that. No. But it's just a system that would make a little more sense. But they won't change it. It's too ingrained, I think, in the NHL at this point to change that. So, whatever. Let's move on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, they didn't do a ton in the offseason. They did trade Jared McCann to Toronto, like you mentioned before.
Like he's on Seattle.
For Philippe Hollander, which is funny because Hollander was actually a guy the Penguins drafted initially.
Oh, really?
I think they traded him to Toronto in the Kessel deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
For that guy and a 7th round pick. So it's fine. I mean, Jared McCann's kind of a streaky scorer. But then Jared McCann then got taken by Seattle, so he is actually on Seattle. So that was more of a deal to protect Kerfoot. But then the Penguins also lost Brandon Tanev to Seattle. So essentially the Penguins lost 2 players.
Yep.
So from a Penguins perspective, it's kind of confusing because you didn't really get anything for McCann, but then you lost Tanev too, so you're basically losing 2 players in the expansion draft when you could have just kept McCann and lost one of the 2 of them instead. It's kind of puzzling, but I think it might have been... and a 7th round pick.
So, you did come
I think it might be cap related as well, because Tanev was getting paid, I think it was 3.5 for 4 more years, and McCann was getting 2, just a smidge under 3 for another year or 2. So it might have been a way to kind of clear cap space as well for the Penguins, who always spend up to the cap. I don't know. It's just kind of odd. So they lost 2 of their forwards, but, they're pieces that can be replaced, essentially. They re-signed Teddy Bluger, Zach Aston Reese, Evan Rodriguez, and Radim Zororna to really kind of cheapish deals. They're just depth guys. Bluger and Aston Reese are a lot of the Penguins' depth. They're 2/3 of their defensive line. The other third of it was Tanev, who they lost, but they did sign Brock McGinn and Dalton Heinen. 4-year deal for McGinn, 1-year deal for Heinen. Those 2 players are essentially to just replace Tanev and McCann. They also signed Louis Domingue to a 1-year vet min contract to be, I would assume, the 3rd goalie.
Yeah.
So that's really all the Penguins did in the offseason. Not too much. They don't really have any money to do anything with. Maybe we'll do another episode right before the season starts, just in case there's any trades during camp, or any of those PTOs get signed to actual deals. There's a few PTOs around the league that are a little interesting, but most of them are like older players or players who aren't very good. But they might make the team. As far as their season outlook goes, Tristan Jarry had a good regular season and then an awful playoffs. So as I mentioned before, the Islanders goalies didn't play great in the playoff series against the Penguins, but Tristan Jarry somehow played worse than them. Essentially, Jarry...
He did. Brain farts.
There was only, and I hate to put it all on him, 3 of the 4 losses in the playoffs you can almost specifically blame Jarry for. One of them was just a very tightly contested game where Jarry actually played okay, but the other 3 losses, he gave up some pretty bad goals. One specifically that basically sealed one of the games was he was trying to clear a puck out of the zone, and he cleared it right to an Islanders player, and he was out of the crease when he did that, and the Islanders player just shot right past him. Yeah. So hopefully for the Penguins, Jarry can have a rebound season, be a little bit more consistent, hopefully put those playoff bungles behind him. To look back on another Penguins goalie who had some pretty bad playoff lapses and then played very well for the Penguins in the playoffs, Marc-Andre Fleury played terrible in the playoffs sometimes for the Penguins. But then, then he won a cup where he played amazing, and he was part of winning 2 other cups, So hopefully he can put that behind him for the Penguins and have a solid year and then solid playoffs. But, we'll have to see. Goalie is definitely a huge question mark for the Penguins because his backup is Casey DeSmith, who is a fine backup goaltender, but not what you would say like a starter, you know? They're one of those teams that I would call a bubble team in the Metro Division because they won the East Division last year, which you could say may have been stronger than the normal Metro Division because Boston was in it.
Yep.
They won. They ended up coming in first. They had a really good second half of the year. But, every year since the last Stanley Cup, so the last 4 years or so, everybody has predicted the Penguins to miss the playoffs. Now, the Penguins have the longest playoff streak in the league currently. Not of all time, but just the longest streak going, which I think is at 14 or 15 years at this point. We'll see if this is the year that it finally breaks. The last year that they missed the playoffs was Crosby's rookie year. So every year since then, they have made the playoffs. Speaking of Crosby, he actually had wrist surgery, I want to say about a month ago at this point, which means he is going to miss the beginning of the season, but not a ton of the beginning of the season.
Malkin's going to miss, too.
That's the other point. Malkin is going to miss a good chunk of the season. I'm not 100% sure if they even know how much of the season he's going to miss. Just looking at the injury report right here, it says Crosby expected duration 6 weeks, but that was, I think, at least a few weeks ago that he had that surgery. That was the prediction after the surgery. Malkin is unknown. So Malkin, I would say...
I think he just had surgery, though.
Malkin?
Yeah.
No, Malkin had it right after the playoffs ended.
Oh, okay.
It was knee surgery.
Yeah.
Crosby had it more recently because I think from what I read is he and the Penguins thought that I guess he had a wrist injury in the playoffs or right before the playoffs last year. And he thought that he could just allow it to heal and it would be fine, but then it turned out that he actually needed surgery.
Gotcha.
And nobody knew that, including him, until
afterwards.
Right when he had surgery, basically. So they're going to miss their top 2 centers for hopefully Crosby only the first couple of weeks. Malkin maybe the first half of the season. Now, the Penguins have shown in the past, and this is credit to their depth and to their coaching, that they can still win games even without Malkin and Crosby. So we'll have to see. Another aspect of this season is this is the last year on the contracts of both Malkin and Letang. Now, I think that they will probably be re-signed because the Penguins now have won 3 Stanley Cups, with those two guys in the lineups. They're both on the latter stages of their careers. I think the Penguins and those two players will probably want those guys to just retire as Penguins. Last I heard from one of the Penguins beat reporters is that Malkin is willing to take a substantial pay cut to stay in Pittsburgh. Letang, there is a question to that. So, of the two of them, if I had to predict one of them not being there, it would probably be Letang. So that's just something to watch out for as the season goes on. They're a possible playoff team, as I mentioned. I would say a stronger bubble team than a couple of the other bubble teams. But with these injuries already, you never know.
Yeah, they could be put in a hole pretty early.
Yeah, and then with their goaltending as well, you never know.
Right.
Or
they're fine.
They're fine. That's the thing with the Penguins is, like, I've heard, shout out to the hockey guy on YouTube. He says every year, don't ever count out the Penguins. Especially, at least while they still have Crosby and Malkin. Mm-hmm. Don't ever count them out because those two guys are generational talents. Those two guys are Hall of Famers. I don't care what anybody says. Crosby is one of the best players of all time. Malkin should probably also make the playoff. Not the playoffs, the Hall of Fame. So yeah, we'll see. I think they're a playoff team, but if they miss, it wouldn't shock me. We'll just have to see how it goes, And then for my final team in the Metro, we have the Washington Capitals. Another team that really didn't do too much in the offseason because just like the Penguins, just like a few of the other teams that we've discussed there, they always spend up to the cap, so they don't really have any room to do anything. The major thing that they did is they re-signed their captain, Hall of Famer, legend, possibly best goal scorer of all time. That's debatable, but I would agree with that thought. Alex Ovechkin, 5 years, $9.5 million per. 5 years maybe seems long because he is 35, yep. 36, something like that. But he is their captain. He has been very consistently an incredibly good goal scorer.
Yep.
Almost his entire career. There's a couple years in there where he was like, but
he only has to score 35 goals a season for those 5 years
to break the record.
The record.
I'm sure that's the Capitals want him to do that. I'm sure he wants to do that. Honestly, I want him to do it.
Let's see a Gretzky record go.
Yeah, I want to see a Gretzky record broken because he has way too many of them. So I want to see that. I just want to see that in my lifetime. That would be fantastic to see. And, Ovechkin is another guy, just like Crosby and Malkin. Definite Hall of Famer. Obviously, even if he retired today, he would be in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
I think it's an easy decision to bring him back. $9.5 million seems fine to me as a price point. 5 years, I'm sure they did that to ensure that he is good. If he breaks that record, it'll be with the Capitals.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he doesn't want to play anywhere else. I don't want him to play anywhere else. He's one of those guys, I think I mentioned in the last episode, you don't want to see him in another jersey because that's just wrong. It's just weird. Wrong. So, yeah, it seems fine to me. So, one of the funny things that happened in the offseason is they lost Vitek Vanacek in the expansion draft to Seattle and then just got him back from Seattle.
He was going to be Seattle's backup, and then
they signed Grubauer out of nowhere, and then they were like, here, you can have Vanacek back for a second-round pick, which seems fine.
Yeah.
Vanacek played well for them last year. They did sign Ilya Samsonov, their other goalie, to a 1 year, $2 million per year. I would assume he's going to be in a tandem with Vanacek, just based on how Vanacek played, and Samsonov was kind of a dum-dum last year, got COVID, and then he was in a quad accident.
Yep.
As well. Samsonov doesn't seem like the smartest dude in the world. Maybe he'll smarten up after those two things, but we'll see. So I assume that will be a tandem.
Yeah, probably.
Going into next year. As far as the season outlook, again, they barely did anything. They did trade Brendan Dillon, like I mentioned in the last episode, to Winnipeg for a couple draft picks. Other than that, they're basically icing nearly the same team as last year, a team that made the playoffs. Didn't go very far, but...
I don't know if this would be considered part of last season, but they also re-sign Backstrom.
Oh, I think they did that during the season last year. But yeah, they extended Backstrom as well. So to also keep him there.
The exact same team.
It's basically the other than Brendan Dillon, the exact same team. Oh, and Chara, correct. But again, I would say they're one of the stronger bubble teams. Like if I had to guess, the weaker bubble teams, definitely the Rangers, maybe the Flyers, and the stronger bubble teams are the Penguins and the Capitals. The Penguins won the division last year. The Capitals were right there as well. I think they either ended up tied with the Penguins or 1 point behind the Penguins. Because the top three in that division were the Penguins, Boston, and the Capitals. I don't remember who finished second and third, but
Boston, I believe, was third.
Okay. So, but they had very similar point totals from what I recall. They were almost identical.
Yeah, they were.
And the Penguins, I think the Penguins just won on tiebreakers as the division winner. So I would say the Capitals are probably gonna make the playoffs. Clay's laughing because my last note about the Capitals is Tom Wilson's gonna do something dumb. He always does. He does at least one dumb thing every year, and the league, I think he's calmed down a little bit.
Since that massive suspension.
Since that, 20-game suspension or whatever it was?
They
knocked it down a little bit, I think.
It ended up being like 14 or 15.
He hurt somebody in the preseason for no reason.
He hurt like 2 people.
Yeah, so the league is wise to Tom Wilson's shenanigans, but
he got suspended last year due to the Carlo hit.
Yeah.
He
should have been suspended for the Rangers thing.
Incident.
At least 1 or 2 games.
1 game would have.
Because it wasn't like nothing he did during the Rangers thing was horrible. He did punch somebody on the ice, but I don't think that's like a get rid of him for the rest of the year sort of thing.
One game would have calmed that entire thing down.
Yeah, I
honestly,
think so too.
One thing, like
if he had, did he even get fined for it?
Yes.
Still, just 1 or 2 games because you guys were like solidly in the playoffs at that point. It really wouldn't have mattered.
He got fined for the punch.
Okay.
Everything after that, they considered
part of the kerfuffle.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The thing about Tom Wilson is like he's a very good like power forward, but then he also is like a goon as well. So like if he could stop being a goon, he'd probably be the best power forward in the league. But he keeps doing dumb shit. So I don't know. I would imagine he'll do something stupid at least once this year. But we'll see. Who's to say? As is quickly becoming our catchphrase.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
All right. Up next for me is Buffalo. The Sabres.
Buffalo.
Real quiet on the free agency front. Vinny Hinestraza, Craig Anderson.
Oh, Craig. Oh, okay,
that's the other goal.
Wait, I thought he retired.
He didn't.
Really?
Craig Anderson signed the vet man and is Buffalo's starting goalie.
Did he even play last year? Like barely at all?
We found the Anderson I was confused
about.
That's
the... Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, yeah, there he is. That's crazy. He's 40.
Yeah.
Damn, he's been in this league a long time.
He and Aaron Dell will be the goalies.
Are they tandem, yeah.
And then...
Mark O.
Is that Psychic or Pissick?
Pissick. I think you do say that.
I wanted to say Pissick, but, I've been wrong all the time.
Yeah, that's one that trips me up a little bit, is because... Yeah, I think
whatever, they signed him for under $1 million for a year. So, a lot of depth.
Yeah, good depth? Or
who knows? Depth. They did do a bunch of re-signings / extensions. That was most of their offseason. So it was Rasmus Asplund, 2 years. Drake
Kajula. I knew who it was. Too.
I knew.
Have to look.
I've been practicing this entire time.
I always want to say Caligula when I see his name, and I know it's not that.
It's Kajula. Like minimum. Henry Jokinyara.
Yokiharu.
I knew it.
That's another guy from Finland whose name is like kind of confusing.
3 years, $2.5 million. Casey Middlestat, $2.5 million for 3 years. Same thing. And then they extended Rasmus Dahlin for 3 years, 6.
Yeah, that seems good. I mean,
good.
Dahlin certainly isn't living up to the number 1 overall pick. But he's kind of but he's on really bad teams as well.
And they're also playing him in not his strength with like Laine. They're trying to force him to do something he's not. So it's hard to see.
Yeah.
They got Willie Butcher for nothing.
Yeah. Quote unquote future considerations.
They got a bunch of picks from the Flyers and Hogg.
Oh, right.
We talked about that. So that's good for him.
Rasmus Ristolainen.
Ristolainen's been complaining about being there for a couple years now.
I would too.
Thoughts? They're a bad team.
Well, we got to talk about the elephant in the room too. Speaking of people that don't want to be there anymore.
We're going to get there. They're a bad team.
Gotcha. They are.
While looking at their cap right now, their only bad contracts are Skinner and Okposo.
Yeah, that Skinner one. A lot of people question that one because, like some of the guys that we've mentioned,
he was a 4th liner the year, like last year.
Yeah, they dropped him down to the 4th. He had a really bad year last year, but that was like one good year with Buffalo, and they gave him $9 million until 2027.
It was half a good year with Carolina, half a good year with Buffalo.
So it's one of those guys, like we mentioned. I think Kaprizov and Joel Farabee is both like you pay them for one good year, and then does that keep happening? With Skinner, it has not so far.
Right. So they do have a lot of guys that are looking promising if they develop like they should. They really do. They are a team that doesn't really seem to have an identity in the front office, which is a problem.
Well, their ownership is like, I believe the same people that own them own the Bills.
Yes, it's Pegulas.
Yeah, the Pegulas, and they, as far as I've heard, meddle a lot with what's going on.
In the Sabres, but
not with the Bills, and that's why the Bills are good.
The big elephant in the room is Jack Eichel.
Yeah,
he wants to not be there.
I don't blame him at this point.
He had a herniated disc in his neck, and they are at a disagreement with the team about what to do to fix it.
On what surgery to do, and for something like this, I would say just let the player get the surgery that he wants to get.
Yeah.
Because several weeks ago, I remember his agent came out and said, if we get, I think he wants disc replacement.
He wants a spinal fusion.
He wants fusion. Buffalo wants to do disc replacement.
But Eichel wants fusion.
Yeah.
And I understand where Buffalo is coming from, and this is a surgery that's never really happened to a professional before, so you don't know what's going to happen. But either way.
I would just say, it's his health. It's his body. Let him do what he wants to it. Let him get the surgery that he thinks is best.
Yeah.
And I think I saw last week, he's basically like, I don't care, trade me to whoever. I just don't want to be on the Sabres
at this
anymore.
Point.
And they took the C away from him. They took the captaincy away from him.
That's going to motivate him. What are you doing?
That's going to motivate him.
So he failed a physical, and they took the captaincy away from him.
That's going to motivate him or anybody else on the team.
Unfortunately for Buffalo, you have to pay somebody to come there. You got to pay them a lot. I didn't mention this for Toronto, but no one's taking deals for Toronto either. They're a team that no one takes deals for.
Well, they don't have a ton of money to work with because of the reason to Toronto anyway. But I think the media is the big problem in Toronto, whereas the front office is the big problem with Buffalo. The Sabres.
Yeah.
Bottom feeder team,
so
definitely.
They're bad.
Unfortunately, they do have some nice young guys. Middlestat's a good player. They have Dylan Cousins, Rasmus Dahlin seems like a good player.
Yeah, no, they have a bunch of guys.
Henry Jokiharu seems like a good player.
So
Eichel too. Eichel's a very good player, but
they're
basically treating him like shit. So I don't know. They're going to be a bad team.
They're going to be a bad team. There's nothing about
it. I wonder if they will trade Eichel at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're not going to get as much as they want because they've totally bungled this situation. Mm-hmm. He's injured, so say he gets traded to, I don't know, anywhere, somewhere.
Yep.
Say, okay, the Rangers are a team I keep hearing want Jack Eichel. Say they trade him to the Rangers, and the Rangers are like, okay, get that surgery that you want. I think it's like a 6-week recovery period or something like that, 6 to 8 weeks, which is, we're almost at the beginning of the season at this point. Just so you guys know, just in time-wise, we're recording this on September 30th, so we're just under 2 weeks out of the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. And his agent said a while ago, he was like, hey, look, if they let us get this surgery, he'll be ready for training camp.
Right.
And that was like 2 months ago. And now they're like, now regardless of what it is, he's going to miss time in this. So I don't know. It remains to be seen what happens with this. If they trade him and then he finally gets to be healthy somewhere, I hope they trade him at this point.
I hope he recovers.
I hope he recovers too, because he has star potential. He's a very good player.
Even hurt, he was a star.
Yeah. Even on terrible teams, he was very good. I think he was a point-per-game player when he was healthy. So, yeah.
He's a star.
I just feel bad for Jack Eichel. Yeah. I hope he gets traded to anywhere and gets healthy and plays very well.
100%. Yeah. All right, on to Ottawa.
This is last team, correct?
Last team.
All right.
So, they've done nothing in free agency. They signed 2 guys, Michael Desoto and Victor Mete. M-E-T-E. Mete. Either guys, they're both healthy scratches. Like, they're down there. Those are the only guys that they have signed.
Yeah.
But they've done extensions.
I always forget that they have Matt Murray.
Anton Forsberg, Artem Zub, Drake Baltherson.
What a fun name.
I love Zub.
Sup, Zub.
Drake Baltherson, 6 years, just shy of 5. That's the guy that they like.
Yeah.
And then trade-wise...
That's a cool name, too. Drake
Yeah.
Batherson.
They got Zach Sanford for Logan Brown and a conditional 2022 pick.
4th-round pick, I think.
Something like that.
The condition was kind of weird. It was, I think, dependent on Logan Brown playing X amount of games for St. Louis. If
Logan Brown plays 30 games, they don't have to give him a pick.
Yeah. That's what it was. It's kind of an odd... Sometimes the conditions on those picks can sometimes be, like, really convoluted.
Yep. And they sent Dadonov to Vegas.
Oh, Dadonov was on Ottawa.
They got rid of him. That's
right. I think the years prior he was on Florida. I think in the last episode we mentioned he was on Florida. I think I got confused. It was years prior he was on Florida.
Yeah, they got rid of him for Holden, which is a... Nick Holden.
He's a defenseman. He's like a
bubble guy. Really.
Yeah, 6'7" defenseman.
And a third.
He's a bubblegum boy.
I said bubble guy.
Can we start calling them bubblegum boys?
Yeah, you got it.
All right. There you go. Any guy that's like in and out of the
bubblegum.
The lineup is going to be a bubblegum boy.
And then they got a third next year. So
that's not bad.
Not bad at all.
That's not bad.
They were second to last in the league. Last year. They played
okay down the stretch.
The Canadian teams were tight, pretty much.
They were beating Toronto.
They
like all the entire year, which was really strange.
Each team had another team
that they couldn't beat. Yeah.
Be their boogeyman. Yeah. It was weird. It was fun to watch. But
until the playoffs, and then Montreal was like, "We're gonna win."
Yep. So. I don't think they're making the playoffs.
No. But they're not going to make the playoffs. I think they'll be better. Though,
I see an
because
improvement.
they have Stützle, who had a pretty good year last year.
They're here to mess things up.
Yeah, they're going to be one of those teams that'll like trip up other like quote unquote better teams.
Yeah.
Like they might be Toronto. They could take a game from Boston or 100%. Montreal or Tampa Bay or any other team in the East. So I agree. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think they'll take a step forward this year. Yes. I think they'll be slightly better than they were.
Their question mark is Matt Murray.
Yeah, poor Matt Murray.
Matt Murray's been getting lit up.
Getting lit up with Ottawa, getting lit up with Pittsburgh. important.
High glove side.
Look, here's the thing. He has 2 Stanley Cup rings, so
yeah, it's true.
Nobody can ever take that away from him.
But he got a lot of pressure put on him right at the beginning. So
yeah, true. That's true.
He's a big question mark.
Although they did give him 6.25 until 2024 is too much for Matt Murray for what he brings. So let's get to the fun part. Let's do our who we think is gonna get to the playoffs for this year. You want to start?
I'll start. I think it's going to be 4. I think it's going to be 4.
It's going to be 4 and 4?
I think it's going to be 4 and 4 just because the Metro is going to cannibalize each other.
Okay.
That's really it.
Well, I'll predict 3 of them easily: Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston, and the Atlantic. That'll be for both of us. Who do you think the 4th is going to be? I'm putting them in no particular order.
That's fair. At this point, yeah. I kind of, if anybody, it's probably going to be Toronto.
Oh, right. I actually forgot about Toronto. Yeah. Okay. I don't know how I forgot about Toronto.
But
yeah, I don't know. I'm torn between Toronto and Florida. Of those 3 teams, I think Florida is the weakest. Although Tampa Bay is, I don't think they're stronger than Tampa Bay, but I think Florida is stronger than Toronto.
I do.
All right, let me think about that while we do the Metro. I might do 4 and 4 as well.
Metro is.
Give me your Metro picks.
Carolina, the Islanders. I'm just gonna say Washington and Pittsburgh.
You think the old boys get back there? I would never count out Washington and Pittsburgh to make the playoffs. They're older teams. I wouldn't say they're
I won't be surprised if they miss it, but it's.
I wouldn't say they're major contenders, but they know how to win. They're winning teams.
They're here to fuck shit up.
They know how to win in both the regular season and the postseason. And yeah, both of them have lost in the early rounds of the playoffs the last few years, but they still make it there. I mean, Pittsburgh beat out Washington, New York, and Boston to win the division last year. Yeah, they lost in the first round, but they still beat out those teams in the regular season. So, and they had tons of injuries last year too. Yeah. So they always had Pittsburgh, for whatever reason, always has injury problems.
Yeah, who knows if they'll be able to do anything with that, but I think I see them at least getting there.
I agree with those 4 teams because I never want to count out. I think the Islanders and Carolina are the 2 strongest teams in the division, but I don't want to count out Pittsburgh and Washington either. Now, what I'm torn between is the Flyers and Toronto.
Yeah. It depends on how strong.
It depends on how Carter. It almost depends completely on how Philadelphia's defense and Carter Hart plays. Their offense, I don't have a worry about.
Right.
Because they have Couturier, they have Giroux, they added Cam Atkinson. They have Joe Farabee, who had a good year. They have Travis Konechny. They have great forwards. Yep. Their defense is almost completely reworked. Now, will that help or hinder Carter Hart is where it's at, So, I don't know. I'm tempted to take the Flyers, but I don't want to count out Toronto either because they have Matthews. They have Marner. It's a tough one. That's a tough pick. I pick the Flyers. It's every other year.
Perfect.
I'm picking the Flyers, and the fact that I'm picking the fact that we think Toronto is even a bubble team, basically, that's not good for Toronto.
No,
that ain't good at all. All right, so
thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for joining us again.
We will be back for the.
I think we'll do maybe like a short one to just like guide us into the regular season, because if we don't do one before that, it'll be a few weeks. Yeah. So why don't we say we'll do like a short guy right before the season starts, and just to cover anything that happens in camp, any trades, any signings that happen right before the season starts. And we'll see you then. And I'm looking forward to getting into the season finally.
Let's play that hockey.
Let's play that hockey.